The moment his chest cavity opens, I know he's going to die. Blood pools around my gloved hands, bright arterial red against sterile blue surgical drapes. 37-year-old male, multiple gunshot wounds, brought in during my graveyard shift. His lungs are shredded landscape, each breath a desperate negotiation with mortality. Suction. I bark at the surgical resident. Her hands are shaking. Rookie mistake. My fingers move with practiced precision. Years of emergency surgery etched into muscle memory. I don't feel anything. Not the warmth of his blood, not the weight of his life hanging by the thinnest surgical thread. Detachment is my superpower. BP is dropping, the anesthesiologist mutters. I don't look up, can't look up. My name is Dr. Elena Alvarez. I'm 34, and I've been playing this game of human repair for 11 years. Some days I win. Today doesn't feel like one of those days. The patient, John Doe for now, has a tattoo peeking from beneath the surgical drape. A small anchor, faded blue against skin growing progressively pale. Someone will miss him. Someone always misses them. Michael called, the nurse says quietly, breaking my concentration. Third time this morning. I ignore her. My husband doesn't understand that these moments, between life and death, are the only times I feel truly alive. Not during our carefully scheduled date nights. Not in our meticulously organized suburban home. Here with blood on my hands and a life balanced on the edge of my scalpel, I'm real. The monitor flatlines. 63 minutes. That's how long we fought for this stranger's life. 63 minutes that will become another statistic, another story I'll forget by morning. Time of death, 0347, I announce, my voice flat. Clinical. Precise. I strip off my bloodied gloves with a sharp snap. The resident, Kayla, her name tag reads, looks like she might cry. I've seen that look 1,000 times. New doctors always take it personally. Clean up, I tell her. Write the report. Don't romanticize it. The hallway stretches before me, fluorescent lights casting everything in that harsh hospital white. My phone buzzes. Michael. Again. I don't answer. The break room is empty at this hour. I catch my reflection in the stainless steel refrigerator. Dark circles under my eyes, hair escaping its tight ponytail. I look exactly like what I am, a surgeon who's been awake for 18 hours who hasn't felt anything real in months. My coffee is cold. Perfect. Jack is leaning against the doorframe when I look up. Dr. Jack Reynolds, anesthesiologist, with those green eyes that always seem to see too much. Rough night? He asks. I could tell him about the gunshot victim, about watching life slip away, about the growing chasm in my marriage. Instead, I say, fine. Jack slides a fresh coffee across the table. Black, no sugar, exactly how I drink it. He knows me too well, which is precisely the problem. You're working another double, he states. Not a question. I take the coffee. Our fingers brush. Deliberate or accident? With Jack, nothing is ever accidental. My phone buzzes again. Michael's ringtone, that classical piano piece he programmed years ago when we were still pretending we understood each other. I silence it. Michael's been trying to reach you, Jack says, watching me carefully. Michael doesn't understand anything about my world, I reply, and we both know I'm not just talking about work. The hospital breathes around us, monitors beeping, distant intercom announcements, the constant hum of human suffering and survival. I've made a career of holding people together, of closing wounds, of preventing the inevitable collapse. But my own life? A different story entirely. Jack sits across from me, close enough that I can smell his cologne, something sharp, expensive, professional, unlike the sterile hospital scent that clings to my skin. You're avoiding him, he says. Not a question. A statement. I take a long drink of coffee. Michael wants to discuss kitchen renovations. I just watched a man die. Tell me which conversation feels more urgent. His laugh is low, knowing. Deflection is an art form with you. The truth sits between us like an unwelcome patient. Jack and I both know we're playing a dangerous game. He's married, I'm married, we work together. The potential for destruction is astronomical, and yet. My phone buzzes again. A text from Michael, dinner tonight, 7 p.m.? I don't respond. Jack's hand slides closer. Not touching, just close enough that I can feel the heat of his skin. Dinner? He asks. The moment hangs suspended, like a patient between life and death, like my marriage balanced on a razor's edge. Not tonight, I say, but we both know it's a lie. Jack knows me. Not like Michael knows the version of me I present at dinner parties. Jack sees the version of me that lives between heartbeats, that exists in the raw moments between saving lives and losing them. My phone rings again. Michael. I silence it. Your husband, Jack says, doesn't understand you. It's not a question. It's a calculated observation, a surgical incision into the carefully constructed walls of my life. The rest of my shift passes in a blur of controlled chaos. Patients come and go, lives saved, lives lost. I move through the hospital like a ghost, professional and detached. By the time I change out of my scrubs, the decision is already made. The thing about being a surgeon is you learn to make impossible decisions in milliseconds. Life or death becomes a calculation, a precise mathematical equation of probability and intervention. My marriage feels like that now, an equation I'm about to solve with Jack as my unexpected variable. Not here, I tell him later. My voice is clinical, professional. The restaurant on Maple, 8 p.m. Jack's smile doesn't reach his eyes. He understands the rules of this game we're playing. Boundaries, discretion, the careful choreography of potential destruction. My phone buzzes again. Another text from Michael. Are you working late again? I delete it without responding. The drive home feels like a calculated risk. Each traffic light, each turn becomes a decision point. A moment where I could choose differently. I don't. Michael will be waiting, dinner prepared, wine chilled. Another perfectly orchestrated evening in our perfectly curated life. The house sits silent when I arrive. Michael's laptop is open on the kitchen counter, a half-finished work project illuminating the dark room. I shouldn't, but surgeons are trained observers. I scroll through his emails. One catches my eye, not work-related. A message from an address I don't recognize. Subject line, we need to talk. My heart rate increases, professional training kicks in, pulse, breathing, controlled. I open the email. The message is brief, cryptic. I know about Elena. The house feels different suddenly, smaller, like an operating room after a critical procedure. Something has changed, irrevocably. My phone buzzes. Sophia, my best friend and divorce lawyer. We need to talk, her text reads. Coincidence feels like a luxury I can no longer afford. I call Sophia immediately. Talk, I say the moment she answers. Silence. Then, you're playing a dangerous game, Elena. Sophia knows me, sees the fault lines before they crack. What do you know? I ask. Another pause, calculated. Michael hired a private investigator last week, she says. Before you think it's about Jack, it's not just about Jack. The coffee shop feels like a neutral operating theater, neutral ground, controlled environment. Sophia sits waiting, her eyes, those of a lawyer who sees every potential argument before it forms. Michael knows more than you think, she says, no preamble. I order black coffee, no sugar, professional armor. Explain, I repeat. Sophia slides a manila folder across the table, surgical precision in her movement. The private investigator found something. Not about Jack, about you. My hands, the same hands that have saved countless lives, feel suddenly foreign. The photograph is of me, but not recent, taken years ago. Medical conference, my first year as a surgeon, standing next to a man I haven't thought about in years. Dr. Marcus Reynolds, Sophia says, Jack's older brother, the surgeon who disappeared 10 years ago. The coffee goes cold, forgotten. He was investigated for medical malpractice, Sophia continues, disappeared before the hearing. No one ever found him. My surgical mind starts connecting impossible threads. Jack, the mysterious email, Michael's investigation. What aren't you telling me? I ask. Sophia's look is clinical, professional, dangerous. Jack doesn't know you knew his brother, she says, and Michael is about to change everything. The next hours blur like a critical surgery, fragmented, intense. I return home. Michael sits in the living room, waiting. We need to talk, he says. Not a request. The mysterious email, Sophia's revelations, Jack's connection to his brother. Everything converges in this moment. I know about Jack, Michael says, but Jack isn't the real problem. His voice is clinical, calculated, like a software engineer debugging a complex system. What are you talking about? I ask. Michael slides a file across the coffee table. Medical records, investigations, a decade of hidden history. Jack's brother Marcus wasn't just accused of medical malpractice. He was suspected of something far darker. Systematic patient murders. And somehow I'm connected. You knew, Michael says, didn't you? The truth unravels like a complex surgical procedure. Marcus Reynolds, Jack's brother, had been systematically eliminating patients. Experimental, calculated, leaving no traces, and I had been part of the original investigation team that went silent. I protected the investigation, I say. We couldn't risk public panic. Michael's eyes are cold. Calculating. You buried everything. Protected Jack's family. My affair suddenly feels insignificant, a distraction from a much larger truth. The mysterious emails, the private investigator, Michael's careful planning, all leading to this moment of exposure. What happens now? I ask. Michael's response is surgical, precise. Everything changes. 6 months later, I'm no longer working at the hospital. The investigation reopened, Jack's connection to his brother exposed. My marriage, dissolved but civil. The medical board hearing approaches. My career hangs in balance. I sit in my new apartment, smaller, stark. Nothing like the carefully curated home I shared with Michael. A single framed medical diploma hangs on the wall, a reminder of everything I've risked, everything I've lost. Sophia calls periodically, professional, detached. The investigation continues, she says during our last conversation. Marcus Reynolds, that systematic patient murders go deeper than we initially thought. Jack disappeared. No forwarding address, no explanation. My phone buzzes. A text from Michael. Hearing is next week. Are you prepared? Prepared. Such a clinical word. I think about the patient who died on my table that night. The gunshot victim whose life slipped away while I watched. How many others had Marcus Reynolds eliminated? How many did I inadvertently protect by staying silent? Some secrets are surgical wounds. They don't heal, they just leave scars. The medical board will decide my fate, professional extinction or redemption. But for the first time in years, I feel something real. Accountability. Truth.